You've probably heard me mention Deborah Carr once or twice.
I don't think we want her either.
A Scottish-born actress who quickly rose to fame in the 40s thanks to her films with Michael Powell, Hollywood came calling, and she carved out a career there for the next 3 decades.
Be kind.
She's gone down as one of the greatest actors in history and never gave a bad performance. So which of her roles was she proudest of?
And where, my pet, is Miss Jessel?
The Innocents is a black and white ghost story directed by Jack Clayton, based on Henry James's novella The Turn of the Screw.
The children are possessed. They live and know and share this hell.
We follow Miss Giddens, a young governess on her first job taking care of 2 orphaned children. Initially charmed by the beautiful country estate, Miss Giddens soon starts getting suspicious.
The same man, the man on the tower. The tower? But now, just now, he was staring past me into the house as if he were hunting someone.
She begins to see other people walking around the house and notices that the children are unusually secretive.
Where did you learn that song?
I don't think I remember.
Finally,
Quint. Peter Quint, the master's valet.
But you said...
Yes, miss, you see, he's dead. Quint is dead.
over the years there have been many debates as to what The Innocents is truly about.
Unless they're both deceiving us, the innocents.
Is it just a ghost story about a governess trying to protect 2 children? Is it a psychological drama where ghosts are just figments of an overactive imagination? Is it a tale of repressed Victorian sexuality? Is it the fantasy of a paedophile trying to justify her attraction to a young boy?
There are things that I haven't told you, that I can't bring myself to tell even you.
The answer? All of the above.
Or is it all in her mind, and is she just going round the bend a little bit, out of frustration? And he said, "You make up your mind."
The ambiguity of The Innocents is one of the reasons it's so brilliant.
I can't!
Admit it! She's there! You know you can see her!
I can't!
But look, she's there!
The Innocents and another 60s ghost story, The Haunting, do this, in the case of the latter, using a protagonist with questionable sanity and never showing a ghost at all.
Whose hand was I holding?
The Innocents uses the shots and framing to keep the audience guessing.
Anna?
There are many scenes where Miss Giddens' reaction is shown first, and then we cut to a ghost.
Has she mentioned it? Mentioned Miss Jessel?
Only to say there was no one there.
And you pretended to believe her.
I didn't have to pretend.
From start to finish, the film never confirms any of the above theories.
Do you have an imagination?
Yes, I can answer that. Yes.
That was how it was in the original novella, and Jack Clayton wanted to capture the spirit of that.
But when you're making a movie, you actually see the ghosts, so how do you create the ambiguity of whether you've seen them or not?
The film was based on a stage adaptation written by William Archibald, but the play differed by having the children touching and interacting with the ghosts, whereas they keep their distance in the novella.
So far, these monsters have kept their distance. Only been seen in high places, through windows, across the lake. But they intend coming closer.
The play had also focused on Miss Giddens' sexual repression, and it's there in the film too, but it's kept as subtext, with little bits of Freudian imagery in certain shots.
Oh, Miss Jessel? Oh, she was a young woman. Some thought her pretty, and I suppose she was, but...
There is mention of the attractiveness of both of the ghosts.
Would you say he was very handsome?
Oh, yes, handsome and obscene.
And Miss Giddens herself interprets something sexual in their motivations.
Hungry for him. His arms and his lips.
If you lean more towards the governess imagining everything, then the whole plot hinges on a repressed woman letting her sex fantasy get the best of her.
The man you've been meeting, that you'll never stop meeting.
You're wrong! You're insane!
Quint's ghost, of course, isn't seen up close until after Miss Giddens sees his picture in the attic.
If I didn't see him, how could I have described him so accurately?
Well, you had seen his picture.
And then there's Miss Giddens' relationship with Miles.
I think you're far too pretty to be a governess.
He's a 12-year-old boy that's aware of his own awakening sexuality.
And I think you're far too young to be such a deceitful flatterer.
And his only adult role model was a man who had unconventional attitudes towards women.
If he struck her, oh yes, and I've seen him knock her to the floor.
The creepy behaviour, like playfully strangling Miss Giddens, could easily be something he assumed two lovers did together.
I told you, you're hurting me. Now, Miles, I mean it.
Do you?
The shameless flirting could have come from his uncle.
Even when he was a boy, he could twist you around his finger, and the children are the same way.
And the kiss.
Kiss me goodnight, Miss Giddens.
Again, could be an impressionable young boy fixating on the only woman available.
I hope you won't have to wear spectacles. You're much too pretty for that.
And what about Miss Giddens' reaction to the kiss? It would be easy to write this off as her simply being shocked, but what does she do at the end of the film? This gives her character another layer and another possible motivation.
And meeting you.
Perhaps Miss Giddens is entertaining an attraction to someone a little younger than she should.
Miles.
You're Miss Giddens, aren't you?
Yes.
How do you do?
Scenes between the two seem less like a mother and son dynamic and more like the undertones of two lovers.
Don't be frightened. It was only the wind, my dear.
And is Miss Giddens trying to rationalise her attraction to a young boy by telling herself that he's possessed by the ghost of an older man? An attractive older man. You can see why this film is so brilliant.
She's not alone. And at such time, she's not a child. She's an old, old woman.
There are other things in the story that point to Miss Giddens imagining everything.
He said that once, when he was on the lake, he could see a hand waving on the bottom.
It's literally not until she hears Flora mention this that she starts to see the ghost of Miss Jessel on the lake. The whole appearance of Miss Jessel as a weeping Ophelia figure could easily come from Miss Giddens' overactive imagination.
A woman dressed in black. Miss Jessel.
Miss Giddens rationalises everything that the ghosts could want in a scene that could easily be read as her making mountains out of molehills.
Flora saw her too.
Did she tell you so?
No, of course not. She lied to me. Well, it amounted to a lie.
And relying on circumstantial evidence as opposed to real proof.
I can't pretend to understand what its purpose is. I only know that it is happening.
When viewed through this lens, The Innocents becomes a story of a delusional governess forcing two traumatised children to face the horrors in their pasts, all in the hopes of proving she's not crazy.
One word of the truth from these children, and we can cast out those devils forever.
Her efforts end up traumatising Flora even further and getting Miles killed.
Miles!
But what if...
Wouldn't the Lord just leave me here to walk around? Isn't that what happens to some people?
As I said, there's evidence that the ghosts are imagined, but there's plenty to suggest they're real as well. Miss Giddens first hears someone calling out for Flora as soon as she arrives.
I heard you call her name.
Oh, not me, miss.
She starts to see ghosts long before things start falling apart in the house.
Is there anyone living here that I don't know about?
The ghosts start appearing, and then things go wrong, as opposed to the other way round.
A dream. Well, don't you think I want to believe that?
And when she first sees Quint up close, she interprets him as a threatening entity, long before she knows what he was like as a person.
There were things in his life that could account for violence done him. Vicious things. There's
also the way this scene is presented.
Flora. Who is it? Over there.
Flora's expression could go either way, as Pamela Franklin was never given the full context of her scenes. But Miss Giddens just says,
Over there.
Over there could mean any number of things. She doesn't say there's someone on the lake. From Flora's perspective, Miss Giddens could be pointing out someone in the distance she hasn't noticed yet, or someone coming behind them. But she reacts as if it's the figure on the lake she was talking about. In this scene, it looks a lot like Flora can see this apparition and is shocked that Miss Giddens can as well. And it's not until much later on that we're told Miss Jessel drowned herself by jumping into the lake.
She put an end to herself. She was found in the lake.
She did hear about a hand being seen on the bottom, but it's a big jump to go from that to coincidentally guessing how Miss Jessel died.
Oh, there you are. I thought someone was watching me.
And who did you think it was?
When the others deny seeing the ghosts, the audience is never told if they're telling the truth or in denial.
You saw that woman.
I know what I saw.
Denial is a huge part of Mrs. Gross's life, from how she chose to ignore the behaviour of Quint and Miss Jessel to the smaller things the others say about her.
We must pretend we didn't hear it. That's what Mrs. Gross always says.
Pretend?
Then we won't imagine things.
It's entirely possible Mrs. Gross did see the ghost, but convinced herself she didn't.
Until you made her face that
woman, say it!
bad memory.
Mrs. Gross's main attitude towards a bad situation is to try and ignore it in case things get worse.
It might cause talk, a scandal.
Haven't we worse to fear than a scandal?
But what good would it do, miss?
So, what if she's ignoring the ghost?
You'd know that waking a child can sometimes be worse than any bad dream.
No.
It's the shock.
In some ways, Miles's character makes a little more sense if he is being haunted.
But I do sense things.
There are the subtle things like the way his wardrobe changes to evoke Quince by the end, and some of his behaviour in that confrontation with Miss Giddens.
Sometimes I heard things. And sometimes at night, when everything was dark. What? They screamed.
While he is a boy in a transitional time in his life, who's to say that Quint isn't taking advantage of a traumatised hormonal preteen?
That poor little boy worshipped Quint.
And the way Miles dies.
You're safe. You're free.
Victorians loved their brain fevers, their dying of a broken heart, and of course, death by shock.
You must say his name!
Of course, it all depends on how you want to interpret Miles's vague medical history, but he appears to be a perfectly healthy young boy who just drops dead out of shock. Or maybe a ghost leaving him? The Innocents is an amazing film in so many ways. In addition to the writing, we have the cinematography by Freddie Francis. 20th Century Fox forced Jack Clayton to shoot in widescreen cinemascope, which was known for producing a very flat image, but Freddie Francis found ways to use the extra space at either end of the frame, such as deep focus and extensive use of lights. It all serves to make Bly Manor seem endless and imposing, emphasising how overpowered Miss Giddens feels.
And big ones get bigger at night. Do you know that?
Do they?
I literally find something to geek out about on every rewatch.
Come from your prison. Come from your grave. For the moon is arisen.
While I will get to the Deborah Carr gushing, praise has to be given to the two child actors.
It's a bit sad, though, when people don't have time for you.
Martin Stevens was no stranger to playing supernaturally independent boys, having done a similar role in Village of the Damned, and the entire runtime keeps you guessing whether this is just a troubled boy who's grown up too fast, or an adult possessing a child.
If you really thought that, we wouldn't be having these conversations.
Pamela Franklin would later be known for her fantastic work in the prime of Miss Jean Brodie, but her performance as Flora comes close to stealing the show.
Oh, look! It's a lovely spider, and it's eating a butterfly.
And this was only her first film.
I wish there was some way of sleeping in several rooms at once. Mrs. Gross was quite startled by the thought.
Megs Jenkins does the groundwork as Mrs. Gross, and she'd end up playing the same role in another adaptation in the 70s.
There was too much whispering in this house, miss.
But now, the gushing can begin.
Where is she? You know you can see her.
If you were like me, you were introduced to Deborah Carr from The King and I. Maybe you were one of those who caught an affair to remember when Sleepless in Seattle revived its popularity in the 90s. I also was lucky to catch From Here to Eternity at a young age, so I was well used to her by the time I finally saw this.
And now, despite all that, you turn on me. You blame me. And all I want to do is save the children, not destroy them. Don't you know that?
I can say that I've watched even more of her filmography, and this is easily my favourite performance of hers.
I'm not a cruel person. I'm sometimes very foolish and I make mistakes, but I'm not cruel.
It's hard to talk about exactly why it works, especially with how acting styles have changed since the 1960s, but The Innocents would not be the classic that it is without this actress playing Miss Giddens.
You do realise that this would be my first position.
And yay for the source material calling for a 20-year-old ingenue, and the filmmakers casting a 40-year-old.
What a grumpy old governess you have.
It's one of those films where all the right ingredients come together in unexpectedly brilliant ways.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Perfect cast members, writing with lots of good material and even better subtext, incredible cinematography and art direction, and just enough symbolism to be striking without being on the nose. I'm going to finish on a personal note, that of a Halloween evening in 2019 where we couldn't see such an unpredictable future in sight. I got to show this film to my best friend, and while I'm always happy for people to have different opinions, I can't deny I felt a special connection when the credits rolled and he said, "That might be the best horror film I've ever seen."
Mm-hmm.